LiberalViewer presents.
So, welcome to the March 7th edition of LiberalViewer Sunday Live Clip Roundup. Thanks for joining me. I'll be using the 11 best, most newsworthy clips from the Sunday morning news analysis shows from the big five corporate outlets of ABC, NBC, CBS, CNN, and Fox News, the so-called corporate media here in the United States, for what should be a really educational, informative, political commentary, and media criticism, fair use show for you all tonight. Fair use usually goes earlier in that sentence, but I'm staring right into the camera. I'm not even reading the thing that I've memorized over 411 Sunday shows to start off the show. Well, it's changed a little bit over the years, but I do have three topics for you tonight. The first topic, the main topic, the title topic is Joe Manchin rules America, ? Senator Joe Manchin from West Virginia is the key 50th vote that the Democrats need to get things passed that they can get passed with just 50 votes, which actually turns out to be not that much. And Joe Manchin went on 4 of the 5 Sunday morning news analysis shows this morning, and I will have one clip from each of those 4 shows of Joe Manchin. I will also have a clip of Mississippi Governor Tate Reeves for my second topic, which is Republicans end mask mandates too soon. And Texas and Mississippi lifted their mask mandates this week, and there are, I think, like 15, 17 other Republican states. You'll see it in some of the news summaries I show later. And then the final topic I'm going to discuss with you is the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act that passed the House of Representatives again. It did under the last Congress, never made it through the Senate, and it includes a reform of qualified immunity, which is this terrible legal doctrine totally created by the Supreme Court. You have a right to sue police officers for violating your civil rights under section or under Title 42 of the U.S. Code, Section 1983. 42 U.S.C. Section 1983 creates this cause of action. Oh, I am a lawyer, by the way. Most of you know that anyway, so I will commit a little legal analysis when I get to that topic. And there's nothing in the law that Congress wrote that gives police officers qualified immunity. And qualified immunity means that if they didn't clearly know from some previous case that with the exact same facts that what they did was unconstitutional, then they can't be sued. And for my, usually at this point I would give some political comedy, but this week it's really about how the legal doctrine of qualified immunity is a bad joke. And I'm going to start off using a tweet from a conservative, Clark Nelly of the Cato Institute. And if you follow my Twitter, LiberalViewer on Twitter, you know that I've retweeted out multiple court decisions showing what a bad joke qualified immunity is. And the Fifth Circuit, which in Texas, it's one of the more conservative circuits, it had this terrible case that Clark Nelly from the conservative Cato Institute tweeted about, because the Cato Institute also opposes qualified immunity. Here's that tweet. Police tase man who's covered self in gasoline, knowing it had set him on fire, which it did, killing him. It's astonishing that judges think they're helping the institution of law enforcement by handing out free passes here. This destroys public confidence. And that case, you think that sounds bad? It actually gets even worse if you learn more about the facts, and I am going to show you some screenshots from that case about the facts when I get to the last clip. Ben Crump, who represents one of the lawyers representing the family of George Floyd, he talks about qualified immunity, and I'll talk about it a little more when I get to that topic. You can also follow along on my clip list, which includes the still images. 10A and 10B are the 2 still images from that Fifth Circuit case. I've also put a link down in the video description if you want to read that whole Fifth Circuit case yourself. But like I said, before I get to the last topic of qualified immunity, I'm going to start with the coronavirus topic and the Joe Manchin topic. And I'll start with the longest of the news summaries. And I don't know if Chuck Todd had the longest, best package. You know, he does this introduction and then segues to a pre-recorded video package that he also narrates. What I find amusing is the pause between his live narration and when they started rolling the video. It's like it's something you see in like comedy. It's almost like a parody. It's just a little bit too long. So watch for the too long pause, and I'll otherwise talk about what is important in this news summary after we watch it together over here.
Good Sunday morning. It was on January 1st of last year that the WHO announced the discovery of a mysterious coronavirus-related case of pneumonia in Wuhan, China. We didn't know it at the time, but we were about to experience the worst pandemic in a century. By February 29th, we had the first reported death from COVID-19 in this country. And then on March 10th, a year ago this week, with total U.S. cases still under 1,000, President Trump said this.
And we're prepared, and we're doing a great job with it, and it will go away. Just stay calm.
We were not prepared. We were not doing a good job, and it still hasn't gone away. The next day is the one that we all remember. That's the day the WHO finally declared COVID a pandemic. It's when Tom Hanks announced that he and his wife, Rita Wilson, had tested positive for the virus. And it's the day after multiple NBA players tested positive that the league shut down. Since then, there have been more than 526,000 deaths and more than 29 million cases reported in the United States. Millions have lost jobs, schools have been shuttered, and our entire way of life has been upended. And now, even as the case and death rates have fallen in the past 2 months, new variants are threatening to produce a fourth wave, while governors are loosening restrictions, prompting fears that spiking the football too early here will lead to a new spike in cases. But President Biden and Democrats are hoping their new $1.9 trillion bill will help blunt the pain of any new surge. And keep this in mind, with this bill, which passed yesterday without any Republican support, we have now thrown $6 trillion in a year at this crisis.
This plan puts us on a path to beating the virus. This plan gives those families who are struggling the most the help and the breathing room they need to get through this moment.
It's a victory for the new president and for Senate Democrats.
As amended is passed.
The COVID relief bill includes new money for testing, contact tracing, and education, for state and local governments, an expansion of unemployment benefits, $300 a week through September 6th, and the child tax credit, and $1,400 direct payments to many Americans.
The American Rescue Plan will go down as one of the most sweeping federal recovery efforts in history.
Democrats stripped out a minimum wage increase that had passed the House after 7 Democrats and 1 independent who votes with them voted against it.
Ms. Sinema, no.
We can no longer tolerate millions of our workers being unable to feed their families because they are working for starvation wages.
The COVID relief bill is widely popular. 70% approve of President Biden's handling of the pandemic, including 44% of Republicans. Despite that, elected Republicans have argued against it, citing process.
Every Republican should vote against it, and the reason why is they completely cut us out of the process.
Cost.
Count me out for a $1.9 trillion spend fest.
And arguing the economy is already strong enough.
Our country is already set for a roaring recovery.
This week, 2 more Republican governors announced an end to mask mandates, and they allowed businesses to reopen at 100% capacity.
Every Texan knows what to do right now. They don't need a state mandate to tell them what to do.
We are not going to continue to use the heavy hand of government when it is no longer justified by the reality we see.
At least 17 states in all plan to drop mask mandates or do not require masks now.
I don't know really what the big rush to get rid of the mask is, because these masks have saved a lot of lives.
And joining me now is Jeff Zients. He's the White House Coronavirus Response Coordinator. Mr. Zients, welcome to Meet the Press.
Almost sounded like his name was Mr. Science, but it's actually Mr. Zients, and I did not take a clip of the new White House Coronavirus Coordinator, but he's the new Deborah Birx. He has the position that Deborah Birx had. anyway, the other things that I want to say about that NBC News Meet the Press news summary, did you see the big pause I was talking about? You probably did. I think it was the only, in some ways it was like the longest and the best. It covered the bill more than the developments on COVID, although I guess the COVID relief bill is COVID news, but that, and it's similar to like the ABC news summary you're going to see after I show you the CBS one next, that also starts off kind of like Chuck Todd did with sort of a recap of its 1 year since the beginning of the pandemic, like I guess it was March 10th or 11th when Tom Hanks got sick and they suspended the NBA games, and that's when everyone knew things were serious. And you'll see that, like I said, in the ABC news summary coming up after the CBS one next. The CBS one, I think, concentrates the most on the news on COVID. It does talk about the bill passing, and Margaret Brennan talks about it at the beginning, and then she hands it off to Mark Strassman, back hanging out in Atlanta, as I was talking about last week, as he did through the whole second half of the last year of the Trump administration, hoping to get a interview with someone at the CDC, and now I guess maybe he lives there. I think someone suggested that in the comments last week, that maybe Mark Strassman lives in Atlanta. That's why he's always doing his reports from there. But I guess I should also point out, if we're doing the 1 year recap, that CBS's Face the Nation was the first and only program to report on coronavirus in China back in February, I think. And as I've said many times, at the time I said this is either overhyping this story, or they're the only one of the big five corporate outlets that is covering the biggest story of the year, and turned out to be number 2. And sometimes I say CBS should be called the coronavirus broadcasting system, because they have done the most consistent, in-depth coverage of COVID-19. If you follow the link to CBS News' Face the Nation down in the video description, the whole Face the Nation program is split up into parts on their Face the Nation YouTube channel. That's where that link goes. Including a report from Elizabeth Palmer that I'm not going to show you about what's going on in the rest of the world. She's in London. She reports on what's going on in Europe and the UK, and even in Brazil, where things are looking pretty nasty. And so that's how deep and extensive their COVID coverage is. You can see a little under 3 minutes of it that I'll talk about with you a little more after we watch together over here.
Good morning and welcome to Face the Nation. If all goes as expected early this week, many Americans will soon receive a third installment of economic aid from the federal government. This latest bill brings the total to nearly $6 trillion that has been spent in the past year to combat the pandemic and shore up the economy. President Biden outlined what's in the package after Senate passage yesterday.
Over 85% of American households will get direct payments of $1,400 per person. Unemployment benefits will be extended for 11 million Americans who've lost their jobs. Schools are going to have the resources they need to open safely. And one more thing, this plan is historic. Taken all together, this plan is going to make it possible to cut child poverty in half.
We begin with senior national correspondent Mark Strassman in Atlanta.
COVID America has an ideal. Everyone deserves a shot. But with lagging distribution of the 3 approved vaccines, so far, less than 10% of Americans have been fully vaccinated.
It may seem tempting to try to rush back to normalcy as if the virus is in the rearview mirror. It's not.
Here's progress: the trajectory of new daily cases, down nearly 75% since the first of the year. Although the number of new cases seems to have leveled off, scientists see twin threats: COVID variants and COVID complacency.
Now is a great time for Texas to be opening up.
On Wednesday, Texas will lift its masking mandate, the 16th state without one.
Woohoo! I'm about done with masks.
California's getting ready to ease restrictions that were once among America's toughest. When Major League Baseball season opens next month, the state will allow a limited number of fans. At the University of Colorado, students partied as though the COVID threat was a class in ancient history. Immunologists agree this crisis is far from over, and getting shots in arms means everything. Polls say about 1 in 5 Americans don't want the vaccine. For the rest, the high demand's obvious at mass vaccination sites. This California roller rink, the Minnesota Vikings practice facility, and the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. FEMA's also opening 2 mass vaccination sites. One of them's here at Mercedes-Benz Stadium in Atlanta. The goal is to give 6,000 shots a day and target people living in lower-income neighborhoods near the stadium. Margaret?
Mark, thank you. We go now to the president's chief medical advisor, Dr. Anthony Fauci. Good morning to you, doctor.
And I don't have an Anthony Fauci clip, although, as you saw, he was on Face the Nation, and you can see his entire interview on the Face the Nation YouTube channel I was talking about before the clip down there. You think, why did Face the Nation have to give that exposure to the Mercedes symbol, like right in the shot there? Like Mercedes doesn't get enough advertising and media exposure without like free news media. I guess it's not really free. They pay to name the stadium there, but still, that seems a little gratuitous to me. You can let me know what you think in the comment section. Like I said before I showed the clip, that was CBS News did the most extensive COVID coverage. They showed the states that you actually also saw in the NBC News Meet the Press news summary, the Republican states that didn't, or that got rid of their mask mandates or never even had them. This next news summary, like I said, the ABC This Week with George Stephanopoulos news summary, Martha Raddatz is hosting this week. One thing I wanted to parenthetically say about Martha Raddatz, remember last week I showed her like cheerleading the bombing of Syria and saying that that Biden had to do it. He had to do something to respond to what Syria did, and not covering the fact that Congress has the power to declare war, and it's of course an act of war to bomb another country, and the authorization, the previous authorization of use of military force from, well, I talked about this extensively last week. You can go watch my video from last week to see that part. But one of the things I said about Martha Raddatz was she's a cheerleader for the military, but she also has like all these relationships with the military, so she gets all these great interviews, and she got an interview with the new Secretary of Defense, exclusive interview with the new Secretary of Defense from the Biden administration this week, so kind of proves my point, although I didn't take a clip of that. I did take a clip of Martha Raddatz's introductory news summary, like I said, very similar to the NBC News one, starting off with a recap of a year ago, talking extensively about the COVID-19 bill, the $1.9 trillion bill. Actually, I think the one thing I like about this ABC News summary is that it goes into the details of the bill with like a PowerPoint presentation of what's in it, which I will talk about with you a little more after we watch that news summary together over here.
Good morning and welcome to This Week. It's hard to believe, but it was 1 year ago that we were enjoying the last week of normal. People packed into sporting events and political rallies, eating in a restaurant less than 6 feet apart. In the days and weeks to come, major sports leagues and theaters going dark. The first stay-at-home orders going into effect. The pandemic paralyzing life as we knew it. The chilling death toll predictions beginning.
100,000 to 200,000, and we think that that is the range.
Nearly 12 months later, the virus has taken more than 500,000 lives, and there are more than 28 million U.S. cases. But with the country now averaging 2 million vaccine doses administered per day, there is also reason for hope, and Americans are itching to get back to normal. At least 14 states recently rolling back restrictions, Texas and Mississippi lifting their mask mandates. Public health experts caution it's still too soon, and a wave of rollbacks could risk any ground we've gained. At the center of this push and pull over public health, the economy. once booming, now battered by the pandemic. This morning, Americans are one step closer to more financial relief after the Senate passed a sweeping $1.9 trillion COVID relief bill yesterday. The package includes another round of direct payments, although fewer Americans will qualify for the $1,400 payments. Unemployment benefits will be extended through September 6th, but will be $100 less than what President Biden wanted, at $300 a week. The bill also provides $130 billion for schools and $350 billion for state, local, and tribal governments. But it almost didn't happen. With no Republican support, marathon negotiations ensued as Democrats worked to keep their party unified in an evenly divided Senate. Moderate Senator Joe Manchin, a critical swing vote at the center of it all. And Senator Manchin joins me now. Senator, you brought the Senate.
And like I said, I will have a clip, 4 different Joe Manchin clips, where he gets accused of wanting to be the most powerful man in America. And I saw someone in the comments talking about him calling Jake Chuck. I have the calling Jake Chuck clip because he was on 4. He did not do the full Ginsburg like Monica Lewinsky's lawyer Daniel Ginsburg did many years ago. That's why they call it the full Ginsburg, going on all 5 shows. But he went on 4 of 5. The only one he didn't go on was Face the Nation. And that's so I have a Benjamin Crump clip from Face the Nation. I have the next news summary now is the Fox News Sunday news summary. And is it biased? Yes, it is biased. If you read, you can hardly see this book, The Loudest Voice in the Room. I probably need to move my camera. So, well, I don't know exactly why. It's kind of, maybe I should move it over. It explains how the Fox News channel was created not as a news network, but as a propaganda outlet for the Republican Party. And it is... I should go back to making Fox News bias videos. I made over 200 of them years ago, and every now and then I make a new one. But I've been watching Fox News lately since in the Biden presidency. And some of the stuff they're doing, well, when I get to the qualified immunity thing, one thing you should keep in mind is I have heard over and over again about qualified immunity on Fox News. They didn't cover it on Fox News Sunday, of course, but it's this biased version where, what was the phrase I heard? Which qualified immunity, getting rid of qualified immunity, which Republican critics say would subject police officers to endless lawsuits, which Republican critics say would subject police officers to endless lawsuits. I think I heard that phrase maybe 20 times this week on Fox News. I watch too much Fox News. And what's the bias in this Fox News Sunday news summary? Well, it's how big the $1.9 trillion, that's one of the things Republicans are trying to emphasize, how big this COVID relief plan is and how some of the stuff isn't directly related to COVID. And see how many times they talk about how big the package is in this. First, Chris Wallace does his introduction, gives it to Mike Emanuel, their reporter, and look for that bias. That's why I pre-criticized the clip so that you can see the bias that I saw watching it multiple times. And I'll talk about it with you a little more after we watch that Fox News Sunday news summary together over here.
And hello again from Fox News in Washington. President Biden's push for his $1.9 trillion COVID relief package is now in the home stretch after the Senate approved the measure Saturday in a straight party-line 50-49 vote. The legislation includes funding for vaccine supplies and distribution, along with a new round of stimulus for families, businesses, and state and local governments. Democrats hope to get the bill through the House and put it on the president's desk before some benefits expire a week from today. In a moment, we'll speak with West Virginia Senator Joe Manchin, who voted for the bill after reaching a deal late Friday over unemployment aid. But first, let's bring in Mike Emanuel on Capitol Hill with what happens next.
It's a good day today.
President Biden is a step away from a major legislative accomplishment, but recognizes he must keep his fellow Democrats together as it heads back to the House.
Bernie Sanders said this is the most progressive bill he's ever seen passed in history than he's been in.
The legislation is so large, its $1.9 trillion in spending is nearly 1/10 of the U.S. economy.
Nobody said passing one of the largest, perhaps the most significant bill to help the poor and working people in decades was going to be easy.
And it wasn't. It took more than 24 hours to pass the legislation in the Senate and last-minute negotiations to get West Virginia Senator Joe Manchin on board. Now $300 in enhanced unemployment benefits will be paid through Labor Day. Republicans unanimously rejected the massive funding package, but could not stop it.
The Senate has never spent $2 trillion in a more haphazard way or through a less rigorous process.
The House is expected to take up this legislation on Tuesday. Democrats there can only lose 4 votes and still pass it. So leadership will seek to move swiftly to send it to the president's desk for his signature. Chris?
Mike Emanuel reporting from Capitol Hill. Mike, thanks for that. And joining us now, West Virginia Senator Joe Manchin, who's become...
And I have the longest clip of Joe Manchin I have is from Fox News Sunday. I think Chris Wallace actually did a pretty good job of asking him about his yen for power, or I don't know, his lust for power, but whether, and also gets him to talk about the filibuster, which is something I want to talk about with you when we get to that clip. That's clip number 9. I have the news summaries in order from longest to shortest. I think I have the 4 Joe Manchin clips in order from shortest to longest, but let me get to the shortest news summary. CNN State of the Union. Jake Tapper always starts off telling us what is the State of the Union this week, and it's what is the State of the Union this week? Oh, beginning to feel hopeful. There was a lot of use of the word hope. Jake Tapper covered most of the same stuff you saw in the other news summaries. I'll talk about it. I won't criticize this one so much. But didn't you see what I promised from the Fox News Sunday news summary? How many times did they point out how big, or use the word big or some synonym for the word big in that news summary for the $1.9 trillion spending bill, which is covered by Jake Tapper, as well as the problems with COVID and the fear of opening too soon over here.
Hello, I'm Jake Tapper in Washington, where the state of our union is beginning to feel a little hopeful. The pace of vaccinations in America hit 2 million per day last week, though health experts warn now is not the time to relax restrictions or public health measures. And for the millions of Americans devastated economically, it does seem that more help is on the way. Saturday, the Senate passed a $1.9 trillion COVID relief bill, which appears headed for President Biden's desk after a final vote in the House on Tuesday. The package is a sweeping expansion of aid targeting low and middle income Americans, including new $1,400 checks, a $300 boost to unemployment benefits, and aid for state and local governments. Now, while the package passed with 0 Republican support, President Biden hailed the legislation as historic and proof that democracy can still work. Though the path was bumpy, even among just Senate Democrats, on Friday, the Senate came to a chaotic standstill for nearly 12 hours as Republicans, Democrats, and President Biden frantically tried to win the support of West Virginia Democratic Senator Joe Manchin, who finally voted with his party after some modifications to the bill. And joining me now,
And actually, that's the next clip I'm going to show you. And this is the one where Joe Manchin calls Jake Chuck, because he's been on all 4 shows, and Jake calls him out on it. Although the question itself that Jake Tapper asks Joe Manchin here, he's like, you're from one of the poorest states. Why are you trying to target the benefits from the COVID-19 relief bill or the COVID relief bill to poor people? And if you think about it, that question doesn't make that much sense. But that's the first Joe Manchin clip I will show you in my Joe Manchin extravaganza. Joe Manchin rules America. At least this week he kind of did. But anyway, here's Jake Tapper talking to him at the beginning of the interview on CNN's State of the Union this morning over here.
And joining me now, the man who this week seemed to control all of Washington, D.C., Democratic Senator Joe Manchin of West Virginia. Senator Manchin, thanks so much for joining us. So after changes that you pushed for, enhanced federal unemployment benefits now expire about a month earlier, and there's a new income cap for writing them off on your taxes. I have to say, you represent one of the lowest income states in the nation. Why were you fighting for less help for citizens during this cruel economic time?
Well, Jake, first let me just say it's always good to be with you, okay? And next of all I did was try to make sure that we were targeting where the help was needed. Right now, we're getting $300 to people who are unemployed by no fault of their own. I want that to continue seamlessly. I think that basically, if you look at all the things that we've done in targeting, how we help the families, how we help their children, with child tax credits, there was so much more that we were doing. We're giving more help to individuals than ever before. $300 was seamless. It continues on through the end of August if needed. And that's what we tried to do. When we put the cap on, Chuck, we've never given. This is the first time we've ever allowed for tax deduction from your unemployment benefits. And basically, to be fair for the people out there working all the time, paying their share of taxes, that was something we were concerned about also. So we limited it to $150,000. We capped it that anybody over $150,000 could not use that offset. Anybody below it that's struggling and working, more the middle class, is able to do that. That was a fair compromise. We worked through that and got it done.
I know you're doing the Roundup shows today, but just to remind you, I'm Jake, not Chuck.
Although, actually, he did call him Jake at the beginning and then called him Chuck later. Jake Tapper otherwise did a pretty good interview, but that question, like I said, doesn't make sense. You come from one of the poorest states. Why are you trying to target these benefits only to the poorer people? That actually does make sense. Why he held up the bill at the last minute for 10 hours, that I can't really explain. But this next clip also, I think, does not bode well. The facts in this next clip doesn't bode well for the $15 minimum wage, one of Joe Biden's big campaign promises. Because Joe Manchin apparently thinks it should be $11 an hour because that's right at the poverty level. And I think that's kind of stupid. I think actually the social safety net should get people right above the poverty level. Even if you're not working, you should get benefits and, welfare or universal basic income or whatever you want to call it, so that you're just above the poverty level, which is not a great place to live. And if you're actually working, you should make, more than that to, give people an incentive to not just get government benefits to work. And even though I think, some people would say that those views I just expressed would make me a democratic socialist. Socialism to me always means government or group ownership of the means of production, not just giving a strong social safety net that keep people out of poverty, which is what I believe in. Joe Manchin apparently thinks that people who work should just be barely out of poverty, which I disagree with. And you can see him express that opinion $11 an hour, not $15 an hour, because that barely gets people out of poverty in West Virginia, I guess, over talking to Martha Raddatz on ABC's This Week with George Stephanopoulos this morning over here.
Let's talk about the minimum wage. You and 7 other Democratic senators voted against Bernie Sanders' amendment that would have increased the minimum wage to $15 an hour. Here's what White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki said about that.
We agree with Senator Sanders, and the president is going to be standing right alongside him, fighting for an increase in the minimum wage to $15 an hour. And he will use his political capital to get that done.
You have your own proposal to increase the minimum wage to $11. So is Joe Biden wasting his political capital on you to get to 15?
Martha, not at all. President Joe Biden knows how to get a deal done. And the bottom line is there is not one senator out of 100 that doesn't want to raise the minimum wage. $7.25 is sinfully low. We must raise it. I agree with President Biden when he says if you go to work every day, you should be above the poverty guidelines, Well, the poverty guidelines to be above that if you're going to work and working full-time should be at $11 base. That should be your base. And then we index it with inflation to make sure it never gets back in this political conundrum we have right now. It shouldn't be a political football. We do the same thing with Social Security. We index that to make sure that inflation and make sure that it moves forward. With the CPI, we can do the same. Now, we have a deal here to be made. If everyone agrees it should be raised, Bernie has chosen $15, and you know what? An awful lot of areas and states have moved to 15. A lot of them moved a lot further than $7.25. There's very few, I think, if any, are at $7.25. But we need to the base of our minimum wage should be above the poverty guideline, so you have the respect and dignity of work. And that's what we're going to do, and I think you'll find us come to an agreement. We'll work this out and move forward the way it should be. It should be together.
Senator, we'll be watching that. I want to turn finally to Governor Cuomo. You were a former...
Oh, and actually all the networks pretty much covered Governor Cuomo's scandals, so I'm glad I kept the clip running to that point. That was something that Fox News they thought Governor Cuomo should be in a scandal for like the last year. But the recent allegations of sexual harassment have now pervaded all the networks. And you saw that on ABC there, but whatever. That's kind of a New York issue, I guess, but I guess it's kind of a fall from grace for someone who looked like he might be a presidential candidate and now looks like he won't even make it to his fourth term as governor that he wanted to run for. But anyway, I don't want to go off into that whole topic. I've never been a big fan of Andrew Cuomo as a politician because I don't think he's really progressive. And I think that's one of the reasons he doesn't have a lot of support now is because a lot of progressives in New York don't like him. And wait, now I'm going further off of my tangent, and I want to get back to Joe Manchin. One thing he said in that clip that I thought was kind of strange was that all 100 senators want to raise the minimum wage. Well, then why didn't the Republican Senate ever bring that up? They could have chosen, for $11. If everyone agrees on $11, the Republicans could have done that. The one thing I like Joe Manchin putting in his proposal is the indexing to inflation so that it actually keeps up it has gotten worse and worse or stayed flat, the minimum wage, based on inflation for many years. So that at least would be an improvement. But $11, as I said before I showed the clip, that's kind of stupid. And then this next clip is Joe Manchin talking about the filibuster with Chuck Todd. The actual Chuck Todd, not the Jake Tapper Chuck Todd you saw in the clip before last. And this is an idea. I talked earlier a little bit about the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act, which is going to be very difficult to get 60 votes for in the Senate. Another bill that was passed, H.R. 1, which expands voting rights in a lot of different ways. That also is going to be very difficult to get through the Senate. And there are some Democrats advocating for a carve-out to the filibuster. I saw Representative James Clyburn on the Sunday show with Jonathan Capehart this morning, who specifically said that in matters of people's rights and voting rights, there should be a carve-out so that you only need 50 votes. And, they could change the filibuster rules any way they want. And that's something Joe Manchin doesn't really rule out in this clip, although in the subsequent clip, the final Joe Manchin clip, talking to Chris Wallace on Fox News Sunday, he sounds very different in his tone about the filibuster. He wants to make doing a filibuster harder, but getting rid of the filibuster harder also. But I'm getting ahead of myself. I just want to mention that because I have this idea maybe Joe Manchin is modulating the way he expresses his views, depending on which network he's on, which, I don't know, given that he couldn't even remember who he was talking to when he was talking to Jake Tapper, that might be a little bit of a stretch, but did he compare what he says here about the filibuster to what he says to Chris Wallace on Fox News, and tell me if he tries to sound more conservative talking to Chris Wallace in the clip after next? Here he is talking to Chuck Todd on NBC News' Meet the Press, talking about a carve-out to the filibuster, which he doesn't rule out for voting rights over here.
Projects everything.
Let me ask you this. I know where you stand on the filibuster itself. But as you know, these election reform proposals that the House has passed, and you know Chuck Schumer is very in favor of them, and it's got a lot of sort of Democratic-based support here. Do you believe in the idea of a carve-out where you could pass election-related bills just like you do with budget reconciliation with 50 votes rather than 60? Are you open to a concept like that?
Well, let me give you this concept, Chuck. What you saw happen with that 50-vote swing and one vote, no matter who it may be, can make a big difference in a tied Senate. Can you imagine doing day-to-day operations this way? Can you imagine not having to sit down, or there's no reason for you to sit down with your colleagues on both sides and have their input? The Senate is the most unique body of government in the world, of governing body in the world. It's deliberate. It's basically designed, Chuck, to make sure the minority has input.
Right.
That's exactly our founding fathers. And now, if you want to make it a little bit more painful, make them stand there and talk, I'm willing to look at any way we can, but I am not willing to take away the involvement of the minority. I've been in the minority, I've been in the majority. And I can tell you the respect I have on both sides when I've been there should be, I got something to say, listen to me. And I want that to happen.
Well, Senator, the filibuster was never an idea of the Founding Fathers. That is a Senate rule that was created by senators later, in fairness. It's not a Founding Father idea. Let me ask you this. You didn't directly answer my question about, would you be willing to go a reconciliation route for election-only bills like H.R. 1?
Let me say this. I'm not willing to go into reconciliation until we at least give bipartisanship or get working together or allow the Senate to do its job. Just by assuming that, hey, they'll never work with us. That's the other side.
Right.
This is tribal. Republicans will never agree on anything, or Democrats will never agree. I don't subscribe to that. I don't buy into that. There's no need for us to go to reconciliation until the other process has failed. That means the normal process of a committee, a hearing, amendments, Chuck, and that's where I am.
Well, that sounds like if then what you're saying is if Republicans continue to be unified in opposition and don't have an open mind, then you may change your mind?
Well, I'm not going to change my mind on the filibuster. I'll change my mind if we need to go to a reconciliation to where we have to get something done once I know they have process into it. But I'm not going to go there until my Republican friends have the ability to have their say also. And I'm hoping they'll get involved to the point to where we have 10 of them that'll work with 50 of us, or 15 of them that'll work with 45 of us. However, you know, whatever it takes the majority, and it takes 60 when we're moving it through normal process, I'm for that. You said something about the Founding Fathers. Why did Washington have bicameral? Why do you want two bodies? One was supposed to be the cooling saucer, as you will. It takes deliberation. It takes listening to the minority to make sure that the majority is getting it right.
Senator Manchin, Democrat from West Virginia. Really appreciate having you on.
Yeah, Chuck Todd really appreciates, Chuck Todd always, or almost always, does that little kiss-up thing, but they almost all do that. Chuck Todd did have a good follow-up there, or did point out that whole Founding Fathers thing, defense of the filibuster is totally bogus. You know, here, if you have your pocket constitution, like I always do, this is my ACLU constitution that I give out to my patrons on Patreon, who contribute. What is that? That's the $10 level. At the $10 level, you get the Constitution and the sticker. At the $5 level, you get the sticker. I actually send out, at both levels, I send out the Constitution and the sticker on Patreon and through direct PayPal contributions where you give me a shipping address. I can't do that for Super Chat contributions, sorry, because there's no way for me to get an address through YouTube or by pressing that join button, although all those ways help me continue these broadcast with my analysis. And one thing I have to say about Joe Manchin's claims on the filibuster there, and you're going to see him say something similar at the end of this next clip I'm going to show you from Fox News Sunday. He talks about the rights of the minority, and I've talked for a while about making this video called filibuster reform, requiring a super majority of people, not states, because you always have to remember in the Senate everyone gets. And he talked about, why did they make a Senate? Well, one reason was to compromise with the slave states to make sure that they would always have a voice, the big states versus the small states. But the difference in size of the states back then was so much less. Right now, California, if you look at how they're apportioned in the House of Representatives, California gets 53 representatives for one representative from Wyoming, the least populous state. And so I had this idea for a filibuster based on population, where each senator gets to vote the number of votes that their state has representatives in the House of Representatives. So each California senator would get 53 votes in the filibuster vote, and each senator from Wyoming would get 1 vote. And so since there are 435 members of the House of Representatives and there are 2 senators from each state, that means 870 total votes if every senator is there, and 60% of that is 522. And that, I think, would be a much better system that points out how the Senate itself is anti-majoritarian, because when under the current system 30 states get 60 votes if you get both senators from every state, but 30 states could represent like 25% of the population, yet they are the 60 vote supermajority. Under the system I'm proposing, 60% of the vote, the 15 largest states could get 522 votes in my 870 vote system. But those 15 largest states include California, Florida, Texas, Ohio, Pennsylvania, and they don't all have Democratic senators. Some of them have like 2 Republican senators. So then the little states could also matter, because the big states are going to split their votes. And I like my system better because it is not as anti-majoritarian. But what Joe Manchin is saying, did I call him Joe Biden earlier? I seem to be saying Joe Biden and Joe Manchin, sort of, you know what I mean. Joe Manchin is saying the rights of the minority when he's talking about states, which are just like big pieces of land and only get representatives based on the people in them. It's people whose voices matter, not big pieces of empty land like they have in Wyoming or Alaska. Or it's the people who need to have a voice. But anyway, Joe Manchin makes that point even more strongly at the end of this next clip. This is the longest Joe Manchin clip, like I said, shortest to longest. But Chris Wallace, I think, does a pretty good job of cross-examining Joe Manchin on his lust for power. And Joe Manchin is pretty prepared, knowing his own like power corrupts quote that Chris Wallace was going to ask him about in this 6-minute final Joe Manchin lust for power, misapprehension of filibuster clip I will talk about with you a little more after we watch it together over here.
You keep talking about the moderate middle. Do you like being the most powerful member of Congress, the swing vote in a 50-50 Senate? Do you like that, sir?
No, I do not. And I did not lobby for this, did not seek it out. The bottom line is I am who I am, and I've always been that person that tried to find the middle of common sense. My state of West Virginia expects that. They know me as that. They're good people, and we just try to do things in a rational, common sense way. So I've said this about power, Chris. I've seen people who've had power that have abused it. I've seen people that sought power, that destroyed themselves trying to get it. And I've seen people that seize the moment. If I can seize this moment and start healing our country, helping our president bring our country together, listening to all sides, and making a decision that doesn't intend to harm anybody. And don't play the tribal politics. It's just not who I am. And I am who I am. I'm not going to change. And I think that hopefully people understand that. And they give me the flexibility and understand that. And I appreciate that. I know it's difficult for some people to understand. This is who I am. I'm just Joe from West Virginia.
Well, let's talk about just Joe, because you have staked out this position, and you were doing it in November, right after the election. I want to put up some of the positions you've taken breaking with your party. You said early on you would not be the 50th Democrat to end the filibuster. You'd not be the 50th Democrat to pack the Supreme Court. And so far, whether it's the $15 minimum wage or Neera Tanden's nomination, you've broken with your party. You just put up, you just said the quote. I was going to put it up on the screen because you said it before about power and what it can do to people. The question I guess I have, here's the quote. I have watched power destroy people, good people, because they abused it. Look, I love talking to you, Senator, but you are on 4 Sunday shows today. And the question I have is, are you enjoying your position of power maybe a little too much?
I sure hope not. Oh my goodness, then I would be, that would be horrible. That's not, no. I want to make sure people understand. I am in that common sense middle. That's who I am. It happened to come down to 50-50. This doesn't happen that often in our political posturing or our governing. And I hope it doesn't come around again for a long time. We need to find a way to work together. That's all I'm trying to do. I'm not taking advantage of any moment at all, but if I can seize the moment and make you understand, hold on. We're not going to just blow things up. We're not going to destroy the Senate. The Founding Fathers decided would be the most deliberate body, unusual from any other form of government in the world and the history's ever known. Seize the moment and fix what has gone wrong. Why did we go so right and so left? We don't run our lives from the extreme. You always try to find that moderate middle to make decisions, to run your life, to enjoy your family, to make sure that you're able to prosper and move forward. You can't do that from the extremes. That's all. And now we've pushed it apart. Maybe it's social media. I don't know what's doing it. But when people can talk about people without looking them in the eye, shaking their hand and giving them their word, and that's who you are, and stick with that, I don't know. Maybe it's old-fashioned West Virginia. It's the way I was raised, Chris.
So, Senator, let me ask you one last question, because going forward, one of the things that you staked out very early on, and I only got about 2 minutes here, is that you would not end the filibuster. The question I have is, would you consider, if the Republicans just won't go along with anything, reforming the filibuster? For instance, the filibuster doesn't apply now to either budget rules, that's why you have this reconciliation, budget issues, or to nominations. Would you consider extending exemptions to other issues? Or would you consider going back to the old filibuster, sort of like Mr. Smith goes to Washington and Jimmy Stewart, where you want a filibuster, it's not an automatic 60 votes, you got to stay on the Senate floor and keep talking?
The filibuster should be painful. It really should be painful. And we've made it more comfortable over the years. Not intentionally, maybe it just evolved into that. Maybe it has to be more painful. Maybe you have to stand there. There's things we can talk about. But Chris, whenever you take away in the Senate the ability for the minority, whoever it may be, Democrats or Republicans, to have input. Why do you have 2 senators in a Rhode Island and 2 senators in a New York or California? Why is there one body that treats everyone, hopefully, the ability to intervene, the ability to be involved, the ability to represent, no matter how large or small? That's so the big person doesn't take advantage of a smaller person or a person in not just stature, but in their position. That's what this is all about, and I'm going to fight for that.
But just to be clear, with 30 seconds left, you would consider making it a little harder to invoke the filibuster so that you just don't automatically have 60 votes that you need for any legislation?
I'd make it harder to get rid of the filibuster. I'm supporting the filibuster. I'm going to continue to support the filibuster. I think it defines who we are as a Senate. I'll make it harder to get rid of it, but it should be painful if you want to use it. You should make sure the place works to where, okay, I want to work with you. How can we do this? How do we move forward? My Republican friends are my friends. They're not my enemies. And my Democrats is my colleagues. They're not my enemy either. That's my caucus. Together, we've got to make this place work, and it should be harder to invoke pain. It should be painful for us. Don't make it painful for the other side.
Senator Manchin, thank you. Thanks for your time after.
And Chris Wallace also kisses up to Joe Manchin at the end of there. I kind of cut it off. But I think Chris Wallace did a good job previous to that, cross-examining Joe Manchin on his lust for power, going on all four Sunday shows of the 5. And he didn't follow up on that founding fathers thing, destroy the Senate, even though, destroy the founding fathers Senate, even though the founding fathers Senate didn't have the filibuster. He, like I said before, I showed the NBC clip. He did seem to have a more conservative tone talking about the filibuster on Fox News than he did on NBC News' Meet the Press, at least in my opinion. You can let me know what you think down in the comment section. And that was more than 4 clips of Joe Manchin of increasing length. I think you have more than enough Joe Manchin there to decide if he's ruling America or this is just his moment. They're actually, unless they get rid of the filibuster or amend the filibuster, maybe I'll try to float my filibuster reform idea in the next week or two and see if I can get it to catch on, although I don't know. I like it, and there are various reasons I think it would be a good campaign, but I think I spent enough time talking about that, and it's time to go on to my second topic. I only have one clip, although all of the news summaries, I think maybe except for the Fox News Sunday news summary, dealt with the actual coronavirus epidemic and the Republicans getting rid of the masks in Texas and Mississippi and what is it, like 15, 17 other Republican states where they don't have the mask mandates and they're opening up businesses and it's all really too soon. Well, Jake Tapper spent about 5 minutes cross-examining the governor of Mississippi, Tate Reeves. And this is actually kind of scary. If you listen closely to his answer, one of the things he says is the goal in Mississippi isn't to prevent the coronavirus from infecting people. That was unattainable, to get rid of the coronavirus. We just don't want our hospitals to be overwhelmed. So it's okay, and we just want there to be enough space in our hospitals so that when people get the coronavirus, they can get the care that hopefully, will get them better. Although, 1%, 2%, 3% of people are dying. But that is not as important as the second thing you'll hear in Tate Reeves' answer, that, you have to weigh that against how much money we're making. If, the businesses have to be able to make money, and if people in Mississippi have to die because of that, well, that the goal was never to stop everybody from dying, just so that there weren't so many people dying that they were flooding the hospitals. You watch this clip and tell me if that, listen carefully, and that is what he is saying to Jake Tapper over here.
Welcome back to State of the Union. I'm Jake Tapper. Texas and Mississippi's governors are facing criticism this week after the decisions to roll back statewide mask mandates, despite advice from health experts who warn it's still too soon to back off such safety measures. Joining us to discuss his decision, the Republican governor of Mississippi, Governor Tate Reeves. Governor Reeves, thanks so much for joining us. I want to start with your decision to end Mississippi's state-imposed mask mandates and restrictions on businesses. Take a listen to what Dr. Anthony Fauci had to say about that decision this week.
It just is inexplicable why you would want to pull back now. I understand the need to want to get back to normality, but you're only going to set yourself back if you just completely push aside the public health guidelines.
The CDC just released a study that said areas with no mask mandates or dining restrictions experience increased rates of infection and death. Health experts believe that because of your decisions, Mississippians will unnecessarily get sick and die. What's your response?
Well, Jake, thanks for having me on today. I always appreciate the opportunity. And the fact of the matter is that all of these individuals who for a year have said, follow the science, follow the data, now want me, when things are going down, to completely ignore the data. The fact is, in America, we're seeing approximately 70,000 cases a day. Mississippi is 1% of the U.S. population, and therefore we should be seeing about 700 cases a day if we were on par with the U.S. The fact is, our 7-day average is under 450 cases. But, Jake, I'll tell you, the total number of cases, even though we're about 40% below the national average, I'm less concerned about number of cases and more concerned about our objective. Our objective in Mississippi has never been to rid ourselves of the virus or make sure that no Mississippian actually gets the virus, because we don't think that's a realistic goal. Our goal is to ensure that we protect the integrity of our healthcare system such that every single Mississippian that gets the virus, that can get better with quality care, receives that quality care. And therefore, we look much more closely from a data standpoint at hospitalizations, number of Mississippians in the ICU, number of Mississippians on ventilators. And the fact of the matter is, all of those numbers have plummeted in our state over the last 2 months.
So, but here's,
plummeted.
I don't think anybody's saying ignore the data. I think they're saying we're not there yet. And, you know, we've been through this before. Back in September, when cases were roughly the same level they are now, you lifted Mississippi's statewide mask mandate then and relaxed social distancing requirements then. At the time, you said, quote, it was a very turbulent summer, but we've come out on the other side. But then cases began to rise again, and you ultimately went through an even worse surge over the winter. More than 3,000 Mississippians lost their lives during that time. We know more people are likely to get sick and die without mask mandates. That's what the science says. Why is this a trade-off you're willing to make, given the fact that we've really been here before?
Well, the fact is that in our state, throughout this pandemic, our approach has been to not only protect lives, but to also protect livelihoods. We have to get our economy rolling so that individuals can get back to work, and I think that's critically important. Let's talk a little bit more about the data. The fact is that at our peak, we had 1,450 Mississippians in hospital beds because of the virus. Today, that number is below 400. At our peak, we had 360 Mississippians in ICU beds. At this point, that number is below 120. The fact is, we have seen significantly reduced levels. And oh, by the way, unlike President Biden, who wants to insult Americans and insult Mississippians, I actually trust Mississippians to make good decisions. They've proven throughout the last year that they can do so, and that's something that I think is very important. The fact is, the numbers don't justify government interaction at the levels that we're seeing in other states.
Mississippians are watching right now. I understand you're lifting the mask mandate, but do you still think that it's a good idea for them to wear masks when they're in public, indoors, around other people? Is that something you would recommend, even if you're not mandating it?
I not only recommend it, I encourage it. If you have not received the vaccination and you're going into a large crowd, or if you're going out to dinner, I strongly encourage the Mississippians and people across the country to wear a mask, because I believe that it does, in fact, reduce the ability of individuals to spread the virus. No question about that, Jake.
Only about 9% of Mississippi residents have been fully vaccinated. 9%.
So I think Jake Tapper did a pretty good job cross-examining him about his lack of a mask mandate, although at least he encouraged mask usage. But even when he did, he said, I encourage people, if they're going into large crowds or out to dinner, which is like ding, ding to like high-risk activities, whether you're wearing a mask or not. But opening up businesses at 100% capacity where people aren't wearing masks. And you saw like Mark Strassman's reported with like the college kids at University of Colorado. Is that the whole state of Mississippi? I don't know. I don't know if I've ever been to Mississippi, but I have been to Texas, and I hope that is not what is going on. But anyway, that was the one and only clip on the Republicans' open or get rid of mask mandates too soon topic, although it was kind of covered in the news summaries. I did notice I got a couple, and I saw I saw that in the live comments that a lot of people are talking about my hair for some reason, and I have to say March 1st was the 8-month anniversary of my last haircut. After the first coronavirus wave, when things started opening up, the person who cuts my hair opened up on June 1st, and I got an appointment like the first day she was back. And I've always kind of thought she was kind of right-wing, maybe Trump support. We never really discussed politics or much of anything. But when I got there, even though I thought we were going to be wearing masks, she said masks only in the common area, and she had me do my haircut. She didn't have a mask on. I didn't have a mask on. I guess I kind of pulled a Nancy Pelosi. That's what she got in trouble for, right? But I didn't feel good about it. I mean, it was like the first day back that she did haircuts, so I guess she didn't have too many clients, because, when you get a haircut from someone, you're not just getting a haircut from that person, you're getting a haircut from everyone they've given a haircut to. I don't know. Sorry, that's like an old STD thing. That's just a joke. But anyway, so I haven't gone back since June 1st. I wasn't really comfortable with that situation. I suppose I could find someone new to cut my hair. But yeah, what you're looking at here is I've been trying to hide it with hairspray for several months, but you're looking at 8 months worth of no cutting of my hair. So thank you for all the comments about my hair. I am just surprised it took 8 months for anyone to start talking about it. And anyway, the final topic, where I promised to use my background as a lawyer, as a former criminal defense attorney, as an ACLU activist. All opinions are my own, of course, but this is on that qualified immunity topic. And I talked about this more at the beginning than I expected. Oh, both Dash and Sandy are in the room with me. I do have a Dash and Sandy or Dandy clip. Oh, and that also reminds me, I got a couple super chat contributions during the show. Wait, where did I put it? Oh, no, I put it over here. Here is, I saw 2 super chat contributions. So Dash and Sandy are both right over there. And Lulu Girl was asking about the sardine. Wait, let me see here. Maybe I can take a live picture of Dash and Sandy for you and then show it to you. With that, it's not as good as here. Okay, I just took a picture of Dash and Sandy, and now I am going to airdrop it to my laptop from my phone. Hold on. Oh, there it is. And when I say Dash and Sandy are right there, this is what I'm looking at. So that was a bonus Dash and Sandy live picture. But no, my daughter is home now, and I did talk to her about helping me with the Dash getting sardines and Sandy getting bacon clip. So maybe I will be recording that this week, but I was thinking maybe I should just release it to patrons on Patreon for a week as one of those patron only posts for a week, and then show it the next week on the show once I have it recorded, just to reward the people who have been supporting my show monthly on Patreon most of my patrons have been doing it for many years. But anyway, I will have a Dash and Sandy clip at the end, and I will probably this week I will record the Dash eats sardines and Sandy eats bacon clip, especially because, I don't know, as I said, Dash the cat is 16 years old, even though he doesn't look it, and he's starting to slow down. I'm starting to worry about Dash. I don't know how many weeks left I have to take the Dash eats sardines clips, but Now I want to get back to my final topic, which, like I said, is not funny, even though qualified immunity is a bad joke of a legal doctrine. As you recall, at the beginning of the show, I showed you this tweet from a conservative lawyer at the Cato Institute, Clark Nelly, talking about police tase man who's covered self in gasoline knowing it had set him on fire, which it did, killing him. But when you look at, and they got qualified immunity from the Fifth Circuit, but if you look at let me read you the full facts of the case here. This is the first paragraph of that case, and there's a link down in the video description to the entire case. This case arises out of the tragic death of Gabriel Eduardo Olivas while responding to a 911 call reporting that Olivas was threatening to kill himself and burn down his family's house. Officers Guadarrama and Jefferson discharged their tasers at Olivas, striking him in the chest. Olivas had doused himself in gasoline, which ignited when the prongs of Guadarrama's taser came into contact with it. Olivas was engulfed in flames. The house burned down. Olivas died of his injuries several days later. So he threatened to commit suicide and burn his house down after dousing himself in gasoline. Police arrive. They set him on fire so that he dies and burns his house down. So exactly what did the police contribute to this situation? Do you think they were negligent, reckless? Well, let me show you one more fact from later in the case. One more fact. This is later in the case. After turning his flashlight on Olivas, Officer Elliott allegedly shouted to Sergeant Jefferson and Officer Guadarrama, "If we tase him, he's going to light on fire." So, and if you are glomming onto the word allegedly there, remember the doctrine of qualified immunity means that the judge throws it out. If you think maybe someone didn't shout to them before they tased him, "If we tase him, he's going to light on fire." Well, that's something the jury gets to see without qualified immunity, and the jury gets to decide if someone said that or not. But that is a possible fact in this case where the Fifth Circuit said, no, a jury never gets to hear this case. And what is it? What is the doctrine of qualified immunity? The doctrine is to be able to sue a police officer, it has to be a clearly established statutory or constitutional right which a reasonable person would have known. And the way courts have construed that standard, they've decided that there has to be a case with these exact facts that has occurred before where courts have said it was unconstitutional. And remember, if you read your U.S. Constitution, like the Fourth Amendment, it says that people should be free from unreasonable searches and seizures. So an unreasonable seizure, that means if a seizure is when they come to arrest you, and courts have said the Fourth Amendment unreasonable seizure clause means that officers can't use unreasonable force to arrest you. So, and remember 42 U.S. Code 1983 lets you sue the police if they violate your constitutional rights, like the Fourth Amendment. But courts have added this clearly established constitutional right that a reasonable person would know, and police officers have to know of these exact facts before they do it to you standard, which was nowhere in the law and is a really bad joke, and resulted in a case where the police got to tase someone after one of the other officers actually may have shouted, "If we tase him, he is going to light on fire." And with that rant or introduction, I will now show you a clip from CBS News' Face the Nation. Benjamin Crump, an attorney I really respect who has represented so many families of victims of police violence, talking both about what Biden promised some of those families when he was a candidate about delivering police reform, and specifically about qualified immunity and why it's so important over in the final news clip tonight over here.
As a candidate, Joe Biden did speak with George Floyd's family, and he made promises, and I wonder what your understanding is in terms of what's actually going to be delivered.
Well, President Biden, Vice President Kamala Harris spoke with George Floyd's family, as many of my other clients, Jacob Blake Jr. and Breonna Taylor's family, while they were campaigning. And they were sincere in saying they believe we need to have police reform. We need systematic change and reform in policing. And I know millions of black people went out and voted in these cities like Atlanta and Milwaukee and Detroit with George Floyd and Breonna on their mind. And so it is my hope that President Biden, who said that this was going to be a priority for him to get policing reform, that he will not ever forget those conversations with George Floyd family, those conversations with Breonna Taylor's broken-hearted mother, those conversations with Jacob Blake, who's paralyzed, because their lives matter, Black lives matter, and this would be something that he could deliver that will be a permanent brand for his legacy, that he did not forget those black people who he talked to on the campaign trail once he ascended to the leader of the free world.
And those political promises are often hard to deliver on when you look at the reality of what has happened with this George Floyd policing reform bill, which passed the House again this past week, but is now headed to the Senate, which we know in the past it stalled there. What area is there for compromise? Can you stomach anything compromised on qualified immunity?
Well, we understand that politics is the art of compromise because we want to make progress. However, on qualified immunity, Margaret, this has to be addressed because this is the thing that allows bad police officers to engage in reprehensible conduct like we saw with George Floyd and countless, I mean hundreds of black people being killed. And it shields their behavior. And we're not saying that this qualified immunity reform will deny police officers their due process, but what we are saying, it will allow those who have been harmed to have access to court, to be able to make sure we change the toxic nature that some of us feel it happens in policing when we look at that George Floyd video. We can do better, America. We must do better.
We will watch.
So, yeah, I don't think Benjamin Crump had time, or at least in that clip, didn't go into all the details about qualified immunity that I talked about before that clip. But he did talk about holding Joe Biden accountable for his promises, and that even though he believes in compromise, qualified immunity is not something on which people should compromise, and that Fifth Circuit case of where they tased the guy knowing that they were, or possibly knowing they were going to set him on fire, and like what reasonable person wouldn't hesitate to tase someone covered in gasoline. And like I said, it's a jury question, and I don't want to go into the whole analysis again, but I definitely agree that qualified immunity needs reform. And you saw I showed a conservative lawyer from the Cato Institute talking about the need for qualified immunity reform. It's judge-made law, which supposedly conservatives are against, and Congress needs to correct this mistake of coddling police officers, not like Fox News kept saying all this week, that it will subject them to endless lawsuits. No, it gives them liability when they behave in ways that violate people's rights, and where they use unreasonable force to arrest someone or do an unreasonable search. That's a violation of rights. If you want to know more rights that police might violate, this ACLU Constitution actually has a Know Your Rights with Police section at the back. I talked about earlier that you can get that by giving me $5 or more on Patreon or on PayPal at links down in the video description. I also wanted to thank another contribution from Lulu Girl, Tom Trask, and Handy Salmon. Or is that Salmon? Some people say Salmon, some people say Salmon. And I saw Chair's Bed in the previous super chat I showed, asked whether I thought Fox News bias would get worse because of competition from OAN and Newsmax. Well, Fox News has a lot more coverage. There's also Sinclair Broadcasting, which is kind of a menace to society in terms of its bias coverage. I won't say enemy of the people, menace to society, I don't know. But I don't know what the future of Fox News is. Tucker Carlson seems to be really popular with he seems to be filling the old Bill O'Reilly demo, or I don't know. But it seems to be a losing strategy, and I hear they're losing viewership to Newsmax and OAN. So thank you for that question. And now I wanted to finish up with my broadcast with a Dash and Sandy clip I promised earlier. This is before Dash and Sandy were fed. I had the bonus Dash and Sandy. Dash the cat is gone. Sandy's still lying there sleeping. But this is when they were waiting for dinner earlier. I think you can hear MSNBC playing in the background very faintly. There's some good shots of Dash and Sandy. I think there might even be a little mewing in the Dash and Sandy, or I'm trying to import it here, or Dandy clip to end the show over here. So there you go. That is the Dash and Sandy clip to end the show this week. I will be back next Sunday and every Sunday, at least through May, I think. I don't know when I will have time to upload some edited, produced videos I've talked about. There are some other ones I might talk about next week or in the coming weeks. And I don't know, maybe that's a way to transition my channel after May, or I can move the show to Mondays or other things I've talked about, but I'll talk about that more in the next couple months. And until next Sunday, or until I have some other reason to upload a video, I guess I will be seeing all of you around the internet.